All right, welcome everyone. I want to call this meeting to order. Today is August 23rd and it is 11:31 by the clock on my computer. And this is a meeting of the Finance Administration Committee and a special meeting of the Board of Directors of the West Basin Municipal Water District. So with that, I would ask our General Manager, E.J. Caldwell, to please determine if we have a quorum.
Happy to do so. Director Harold Williams.
Here.
Chair Scott Houston. Here. Director Gloria Gray.
Here.
Director Don Deere.
Here.
Director Desi Alvarez. Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Okay, very good. Thank you, EJ. Now we'll go on to public comments. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak, whether in here or online?
And Mr. Chairman, we did not receive any requests for public comment prior to the meeting, though, as you just mentioned, this meeting is being held both in person and virtually. So if anybody is in our virtual room here would like to make public comment, please indicate so by raising your virtual hand. And Mr. Chairman, I do not see any requests for public comment.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. So we'll move on to number 4, which is presentations. And I know we have a presentation on the agenda today. EJ, please introduce that item.
Happy to do so. This is item 4A. It's our small community bank program. And today we have Malaga Bank presentation for you. For the introduction of this item, we do have Marianne Rexroad, our manager of finance.
Thank you, EJ. Good morning, President Houston, members of the committee and board. I'm pleased today to welcome back Sasha O'Hara here, Senior Vice President with Malaga Bank. Just as a refresher, our district does have a small and community investment bank program that does require participating banks to make an annual presentation if they meet certain thresholds. Also, the requirement is that the presentation includes certain information such as the bank position, the community services they provide, as well as the loans within the service area. And this presentation does include all that information. And with that, I'd like to thank Sasha for being here today, and I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marianne. It's always my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having us and giving us the opportunity to show off a little bit what we do at Malaga. Thank you also for your continued loyalty. Was reminded that we've been doing this since 2014 now, so we've got a long-standing relationship, and Malaga really appreciates that partnership that we have with you at the West Basin. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. Here is our highlights, and this was as of March 31st. You can see that we're just $1.5 billion in total assets. That's, a nice milestone for us to be reaching or to have reached. We have $776 million in deposits and just shy of $1.3 billion in loans. And we're at just under 24% total risk-based capital ratio. Have 5 full-service branches, and we have 1 loan center. We have the branches in the Palos Verdes Estates and Rolling Hills Estates neighborhoods. We have a branch in San Pedro. We have a full-service branch, standalone branch in Torrance. And then we also have a second branch in Torrance at the Sky Park location, which is also where our loan center is. So that branch shares the facilities with our loan center. Next, we have some of the accolades that we've received in the last year. We've once again been awarded the Bauer Financial Top 5-Star rating. This is our 62nd consecutive quarter of receiving that rating. Bauer Financial Incorporated is one of the nation's leading independent bank rating and research firms. So they rate all of the banks that we have in the United States, and we like I said, for 62 consecutive quarters have received their top tier rating. We were once again awarded the Daily Breeze Annual Reader's Choice Awards as South Bay's Best Bank. This is 7 years consecutively that we've received this award. 8 awards overall. We received it in 2015. For some reason, the community skipped us in 2016, but came back to us in 2017, and we've earned it every year since then. That award for me personally means a lot because it is what our community and our customers and our shareholders think of us. It's not just a numbers game. It's how we perform in our community and how our community views us. So it's always a really important reward for me. And we've been in the community since 1985. It's 38 years that we've been in the South Bay community. Customer testimonials, I'm not going to read those for you, but that's a couple of our customers that discussed their partnership with Malaga Bank, and we did a testimonial campaign where we had quite a few customers offering and willing to share their experiences with Malaga Bank and how we helped them through their financial needs and through their setting up of their accounts and the just regular servicing of the accounts. So that's both the Boys and Girls Club of LA Harbor, that's Mike Lansing spoke for us, and then Rolling Hills Country Day School, which is it's a private school, and they bank with us. They're a local community school, and they appreciate the local community bank that goes along with everything that they do. And they have a lot of needs as an educational institution, and we're able to meet all of those without a problem on a regular basis. So we're pleased that they were able to speak for us as well. Our community support is always off the charts. I have to limit myself because you only give me 9 slides. So we picked a couple of different things, but there's, if you go to our website, we have a community support page, a community partnership page, and that goes through everything that we've done. We did the holiday food drive, a Thanksgiving holiday food drive. We did it for different nonprofits based on the branches, locations for each of the areas, and we were able to donate quite a bit of food that to military families, veteran families, different locations across the South Bay. And Cancer Support Community South Bay is one of those charities that we always every year do a fundraiser for. We do a cancer awareness week within the branches, and customers and employees donate, and then Malaga matches the donations up to a certain amount. And last year we were able to donate $4,500. That'll be coming up again this October. That's another one that's near and dear to my heart because I serve on the board of the Cancer Support Community as well as part of my position at Malaga. So we're always happy to support them as well.
The Cancer Awareness Week is in October?
Yes. Yeah.
I know the date.
Well, it's October. It's usually the end of September, beginning of October. Last year it was a little bit later, towards mid-October. The reason is because it was originally the breast cancer awareness, which is October. The month is October. My hair's getting stuck in my badge. So that's why we started in October. Now we've expanded it to just all cancers. So it's all cancer awareness. So we do it in October. I can let Mary Ann know when we've got the date, and she can pass that along to you. Absolutely. Come in and make a donation during that time, and we'll be able to match it for you. Our next slide shows just some of the organizations that we all belong to. And again, this is just some of our officers of the bank, our president and CEO, our executive vice president and CFO serves on some boards, myself, and some of the boards that I'm on. There's a couple more that are coming that I'm working on helping set up some nonprofits for the city of Torrance that I'm going to be serving on the board for. And then Julia Parton, who is with me in the back over there, she's our business development officer, first vice president. She's everywhere. Anywhere you need to be, you need to see Malaga, you'll see Julia Parton. She serves on a ton of boards for us. She's very, very active within the community. We were so lucky when we got her to join our team, our Malaga Bank team. We're so happy to have her. And then next to Julia is Helen Stoddard, who is the manager of the branch that your account is actually based out of, our Palos Verdes Estates branch in Malaga Cove. That's our corporate office. Helen also serves on several boards within the community, is also out there in the Palos Verdes community. So you go to PV, you'll see Helen and Julia. You go to Torrance, you'll see me and Julia. So we kind of try to get in wherever we can and just support as much as we can and as much as we're able to. Our CRA rating, which is the next slide, is still outstanding per the OCC. We can provide you the report upon request, but it's not different than the last one that I gave you last year. We haven't been rated again since then. We should be getting that again next year. They should be looking at us again in 2024. Then the next slide shows our loans by division. I'm certainly not going to go through all of those numbers with you, but you can definitely look at them on the slides. We divided it up per the divisions that you give us, for the information that you give us with the zip codes and our total amount of loans that are within those areas. This is just a small amount, a small percentage of our loans. Well, it's not a small percentage, it's actually a large percentage of our loans. But we have additional loans in addition to these ones that are outlined per zip code for your divisions. And these are primarily, our lending is primarily real estate investment and multifamily projects. So that's, we're able to provide housing for people with our lending. And we do have some business loans, some business lending. And I don't think we have any construction loans at the moment. No, we don't have any construction loans, although we do offer them. There just hasn't been anything that's come up lately. And that does it for our presentation. I did want to mention that just yesterday we were approved, and Marianne doesn't know this yet, but we were approved to sponsor the annual Harvest Festival, the Water Harvest Festival that West Basin puts on. So we're going to be sponsoring that at the bronze level. And I'll be sending my email as soon as I get back. I wanted to announce it here first. So we're pleased to be able to do that. And we'll probably have some people in attendance. I know Julia attended last year for us, and we're happy to do that. And we're glad that you do that. It's kind of a neat little thing that you guys do. It's not a little thing, it's a big thing, 1,200 people. That does it for me. I'm happy to take any questions if you have any more clarification you need or whatever you like.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you very much, Sasha. I'll go ahead and open it up to my colleagues. So Director Williams, any questions?
No questions, comments. Just want to thank you for your participation, and especially for water harvest. That's one of our main things.
Mm-hmm.
So appreciate you doing that, and look forward to seeing your booth or table, whatever you're going to have there.
Thank you.
At the bronze level, you should have something nice, right?
Yeah, yeah. We're looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Director Deere. Director Gray, any questions or comments? Okay, I don't hear anything. So I just want to also say thank you for the presentation. Of course, you have been working with us a long time, so thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah.
We're really happy with that partnership. I think all the directors, I know myself, of course, but I think all of us really are very supportive of community banks, local banks. We know the issues that have happened in the last handful of years, a lot of consolidation. A lot of banks have disappeared, especially in the local communities. So that's a big part of why we make sure we try our best to put some of our resources in the hands of the locally run banks. So we appreciate that, as well as the tremendous amount of community engagement that you all have. And so, of course, it's harder and harder these days, right? I mean, much larger organizations swallowing up the smaller ones. But at the same time, we have a very vibrant region, not just the South Bay, but greater LA, which I see you have a number of zip codes even up toward parts of my Region 4.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, focusing a lot on, as you said, housing and multi-unit housing. So I just want to, I want to say that we really do value the partnership. Marianne certainly knows that as long as I've been on the board, I've pushed hard that we continue to put investments in the local banks and adjust our policies to help ensure we can do that to the best of our ability based on, yes, the rates and other things, right? Restrictions that we might have or look at. And I think lastly, what I would say too is I see you all out there a lot in the region, and I appreciate that. Of course, I see your branches. as I'm driving and out and about, and have a lot of friends and colleagues that do banking with you as well. So I think it's real important that we're a part of the community, you're a part of the community, that we work together. And so everything you're doing, especially so much participation, it's really appreciated, certainly from the water district. And we're also very happy that you'll be a sponsor of our function. It is a great event, and we're working really hard to get good attendance. So for that. And I think that really does it for me. I don't have any questions of you all. I think it's more comments and compliments.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we appreciate that. Malaga we've been around since 1985. We're not going anywhere. I just had a conversation with Randy Bowers, our CEO, this week about where we're going and what we're doing. And, we're just keep doing what we're doing because it works. Yeah.
How much do we have in that bank?
$1,250,000.
All right, well, with that, thanks again for being here.
Thank you very much.
Being here in person, and we look forward to seeing you at the Water Harvest Festival.
Absolutely.
And, thanks so much for the relationship with our finance department.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, and send people our way. We're happy to help anybody that needs financial assistance. We're there for the community. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so we are going to move into our action calendar, item 5A, approval of minutes.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we actually have a number of set of minutes here today. We have 3 sets, in fact. And for this presentation, we have Desiree Quintero, our board secretary.
Good morning, members of the committee and board. The minutes for the West Basin Board of Directors meetings are an integral part of the public meeting process, providing a history of the actions taken. The following minutes are being brought for the board's consideration. The May 24, 2023 special board meeting minutes for the budget workshop number 4, which can be found beginning on packet page 15. The June 14, 2023 special board meeting minutes, which can be found beginning on packet page 17. And the June 26, 2023 regular board meeting minutes, which can be found beginning on packet page 19. With that, I would like to read the recommendation. Staff recommends that the board approve the May 24, 2023 special board minutes, June 14, 2023 special board minutes, and the June 26, 2023 regular board meeting minutes.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Desiree. So any questions or comments from board members? Director Williams.
Yes, thank you. Anything out of the ordinary?
No, pretty standard minutes this month around.
Okay, very good. And I approve the minutes because I think I was in attendance at each one of those meetings.
Very good. Thank you. Director, do you have any questions? Director Gray? I have no questions either, Desiree. So with that, I would I would recommend this goes forward to the board for full approval.
And I concur.
And Director Williams concurs. Excellent. Okay, let's see. Item 5B is in boy, sponsorship of fiscal year 2023-24 community outreach events. Looks like we have 4, and I would ask staff to just go through all of them, and we'll hold questions to the end.
Thank you very much. For this presentation, we have Haza Vasquez, our deputy board secretary.
Okay, good morning, President Houston, members of the committee and board. If I could turn your attention to packet page 26, where item 5.
Can you speak up just a little more?
Of course.
Thank you.
If I could turn your attention to packet page 26, this is where item 5B begins, and I have 4 items for your consideration today. First one, I have Director Williams requesting consideration for West Basin to sponsor the Lyrical Revolution's 4th annual Prostate Cancer Walk event that is scheduled to be held on Saturday, September 16th. Director Williams at this time is requesting that the board consider a $2,500 sponsorship that would grant West Basin a speaking opportunity for a district representative, a district booth/table to distribute district information, as well as an advertisement promoting district awareness. Additional information regarding this event and the sponsorship requested is included in attachment A, which begins on packet page 29. And of note, West Basin has previously sponsored this event back in fiscal year 21-22 in the same amount of $2,500. Our next item is a request from Director Deere for the board to consider sponsorship of the upcoming Hawthorne Chamber of Commerce 9th Annual Hawthorne Invitational Golf Classic event that is scheduled to be held on Monday, September 25th. Director Deere is requesting that the board consider a $2,500 sponsorship that would grant West Basin an advertisement promoting district awareness. Additional information regarding this sponsorship and the details regarding the various levels and the event is included in attachment B, and that begins on packet page 43. Of note, West Basin did previously sponsor this event in fiscal year 22-23 in the amount of $1,500. Next item I have for your consideration today is another request from Director Deere, and this is for consideration to sponsor the upcoming American Youth Soccer Organization's Region 21 Hawthorne 23rd Annual Epic Soccer Friendship Festival event to be held on Saturday, October 21st. Director Deere is requesting that the board consider a $3,500 sponsorship that would grant West Basin a district booth/table to distribute district information, as well as an advertisement promoting district awareness. Additional information regarding this sponsorship is included on packet page 48. And of note, West Basin did previously sponsor this event in fiscal year 22-23 in the amount of $1,500. The last item that I have for your consideration today is the 71st Annual Los Angeles Chapter of the Lynx, Inc. Leadership Institute and Cotillion Program. Director Gray requests that the board consider sponsoring this event that is scheduled to be held on Friday, November 24th. She is requesting that the board consider a $300 sponsorship that would grant West Basin an advertisement promoting district awareness. Additional information regarding this sponsorship request is included beginning on packet page 51. And I'd like to note that West Basin has not previously sponsored this event. If I turn your attention to packet page 22, just to cover the fiscal impact of this, funds for the sponsorship of these community outreach events are included in the fiscal year 23-24 community outreach budget in the total amount of $75,000. Approval of these sponsorships at the amounts requested by the various directors would leave a remaining budget of $50,700, and that can be seen in attachment E, which begins on packet page 55. And with that, I'd like to read the recommendation. Staff recommends the board consider approving sponsorship of the Lyrical Revolution's 4th Annual Prostate Cancer Walk event, scheduled to be held on Saturday, September 16, 2023, in the amount of $2,500, as requested by Director Williams. Number 2, the Hawthorne Chamber of Commerce's 9th Annual Hawthorne Invitational Golf Classic event, scheduled to be held on Monday, September 25th, 2023, in the amount of $2,500, as requested by Director Deere. Number 3, the American Youth Soccer Organization Region 21 Hawthorne 23rd Annual Epic Soccer Friendship Festival event, scheduled to be held on Saturday, October 21, 2023, in the amount of $3,500, as requested by Director Deere. And lastly, number 4, the 71st Annual Los Angeles Chapter of the Lynx, Incorporating Leadership Institute and Cotillion Program event, scheduled to be held on Friday, November 24th, 2023, in the amount of $300, as requested by Director Gray. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
All right, thank you, Haza. Any questions, Director
Yes.
Williams? Yes, sir, Director Williams.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that, Hazel. For the event, for the prostate cancer walk, have we participated in that before?
We have, the last time that we participated in this, the record that I have is fiscal year 21-22, and we did that in the amount of $2,500.
And where will this event take place?
This is taking place at Cal State Dominguez Hills.
That's all I had.
Okay, great. Thank you, Director Williams. Director Gray, did you have any questions?
Thank you. I had to switch over to another call, but I'm back on. Did I have one of the sponsorship requests that was stated earlier?
Yes, we have one that you requested, Director Gray, and that is the 71st Annual Los Angeles Chapter of the Leadership Institute and Cotillion Program. This is for an
Okay.
advertisement for $300.
All right, thank you very much. No, well, thank you for presenting it for me, but I don't have any questions. The others, thank you.
Thank you, Director Gill. Okay, I have nothing further either, and I would suggest we move the recommendation forward for approval to the board.
I concur.
Director Williams concurs. So thank you very much, Haza, for that one. Now, we will go to item 5C as in cat, which is fiscal year 2023-24 district sponsorship request.
Yes, thank you again. And for this presentation, Hazel Vasquez will be taking this item.
And this item does begin on packet page 56. So if I can turn your attention to that, I have one item on the staff report that I would be presenting for your consideration. The district has received a sponsorship request for the Friends of Bayona Wetlands 2023 Moonlight on the Marsh event that is being held in Playa Vista, California on Saturday, October 14th, 2023. At this time, we do have a couple options for your consideration. There are a few listed here, but if I can turn your attention to packet page 58, this is where the various sponsorship levels are included, including the details of the sponsorship. And these do range in amounts from the highest being $25,000 to the lowest being $1,500. In the past, West Basin has sponsored this event, the last time being in fiscal year 22-23, and we did so in the amount of $1,500. So if I turn your attention to the fiscal impact, which is located at the bottom of page 56, funds for the proposed sponsorship are included in the fiscal year 23-24 sponsorship budget in a total amount of $55,000. At this time, we do have a remaining budget of $46,500. And with that, I'd like to read the recommendation. Staff recommends that the board consider sponsoring the Friends of Bayona Wetlands 2023 Moonlight on the Marsh event to be held Saturday, October 14, 2023. And at this time, we are requesting that the board provide the level of sponsorship for this event. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Haza. Let's see, we did how much before?
The last time that we sponsored this, it was in the amount of $1,500, and that was fiscal year 22-23.
Oh, great. Supported them for many years.
Yes, they were previously, or this event specifically was one that previously appeared, year over year on that pre-approved list of sponsorships that we used to use for these type of sponsorships. So it's been ongoing for some time now.
Way back, Director Little supported them. I'm very supportive as well, and Director Gray has been supportive. So I would recommend we do the $1,500 level again. That's what I would recommend. Of course, it's a committee, so Director Williams.
I could support that.
Okay. Yeah, Director Williams says 1,500. I hear our alternate, Director Gray. Any questions?
Yes, no, I just want to lend my support to the recommendation. I certainly support the organization, and we have been supporting them throughout the years. I think they do great work. So I just want to lend my support to it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Anything, Director Gear? Okay. So with that, we'll move a recommendation of $1,500 sponsorship level support for this item to the full board meeting. Thank you, colleagues. Let me see. I think we've got one more. So it's item 5D as in dog, fiscal year 2023-24 district sponsorship request. DJ.
That is correct. And again, for this presentation, we have Hazel Vasquez.
Thank you. And this item does begin on packet page 60. This is also a request for district sponsorship. I do want to point out, since you will note that there are those two separate items. The previous one, as I mentioned, with Moonlight on the Marsh, that is an event that had appeared year over year on that pre-approved list of district sponsorship. The one that you have before you now that begins on packet page 60, which is for the 18th Annual Taste of Soul Family Festival, that is being held October 21st, 2023. This one was not one that usually appeared on there. It's one that in the past has been handled various ways, both as a community outreach event as well as in more recent years. The most recent sponsorship being fiscal year 22-23 in the amount of $5,000, and those have been processed as district sponsorships, which is why you see this one as a separate item. So with that, again, I mentioned that this event is being held October 21st, 2023 in the city of Los Angeles. Previously, we sponsored in the amount of $5,000. And if you turn to packet page 62, here we've received a letter from the event organizers requesting this sponsorship, and following that, beginning on page 65, all the way through 96, we have all the various levels that they do have available that begin at a whopping $200,000, and the lowest being a $5,000 sponsorship, which again is what we've done in previous years. So the fiscal impact for this item, as you see on packet page 60 towards the bottom, these funds for this proposed sponsorship are included in the fiscal year 23-24 sponsorship budget in the amount of $55,000. And again, same as with the previous item, we currently have a remaining balance of $46,500. So at this time, unlike the previous one, we do have an amount to request or to propose to you here for your consideration, which is an amount of $5,000. So I'll read the recommendation as follows. Director Gray recommends that the board consider sponsoring the 18th annual Taste of Soul Family Festival to be held Saturday, October 21st, 2023 in the amount of $5,000. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Asa. Let's see, Director Williams, any questions?
Again, we've been supporting this for a little while, right?
Yeah, a few years, definitely. And as I mentioned, the only distinction is in times we've done it as a community outreach sponsorship versus a district sponsorship, which we're offering now. And the only difference with that is the bucket of money that it comes out of. But yes, we've been supporting this for some time.
So this recommendation is that staff's recommendation?
It is. The only reason that you do see Director Gray's name listed on there is because the request came in directly to her and she sent it over to us. We do believe that being the size of this event being what it is, that it would be best geared as a district sponsorship versus a specific director sponsorship, which is how our community outreach is usually handled, which is why you see Director Gray's name listed there, but we are as staff standing behind that recommendation and requesting the $5,000 sponsorship.
That being the case, I would move staff's recommendation.
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Director Williams. And Director Gray, do you have a question or comment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I certainly agree with it. Should be a district sponsorship. The request again just came into me, but we have sponsored this event as a district event in the past, and it is a huge outreach to the community, and so I do support it and appreciate the fact that we are considering sponsoring this outstanding event because it does have a tremendous outreach to our community. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Director Gray. Director Gill.
No comment.
Okay. And I would just concur with what already has been said. We've supported this for years. It's a lot of fun. I did go by last year for a bit. I know some of our folks you were there. I ran into you there. It's a lot of fun. It's really good. We have a presence. It's a huge event. And I also note that it's the week after our Water Harvest Festival. So
Yeah, we do tend to run into that issue.
Mhm.
Where it's the same weekend, so.
There's no interference there, and that helps our staff as well. So yeah, I fully support the recommendation, and the Director Williams already said that he concurs. We'll move that to the board for approval. And by the way, let me ask a question. I mean, when we're approving here, doesn't it just go on the consent calendar?
That is correct.
Great. All right, so with that, we are done with those items. We're gonna go to 5E as in Edward. Procurement of open goods budgeting and planning suite.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as you mentioned, this item 5E is related to our OpenGov's budgeting and planning suite. And for this presentation, we have Allison Tong, our accountant too.
Good afternoon, members of the board and those who are here to join us today. I am presenting on item 5E, the procurement of OpenGov's budgeting and planning suite, which starts on packet page 98. West Basin is conducting an ERP assessment, and in the ERP assessment, various recommendations were made to improve the district's financial management system to modernize the business process. One of the identified recommendations was to convert the current budgeting and planning process into a streamlined, centralized system. The district is currently using a complex array of Excel worksheets to manually prepare each budget. Staff have been successful in developing the budget in the past. Staff, in conjunction with the ERP assessment, acknowledges it is time to modernize the current process. I conducted market research and narrowed it down to 3 viable solutions and asked for demonstration from each. Budgeting staff have identified OpenGov as the best solution to integrate with the district's Lawson financial system. The OpenGov budgeting and planning suite will include modules such as operating budget, capital planning, online budget book, workforce planning, and various reporting capabilities which appropriate staff will have access to. On your packet page 99, Table A lists out the summary of costs for implementation and the software license fees. In accordance with the district procurement policy section 5-1.104G, cooperative agreements shall be pursued whenever feasible and in the best interest of the district. West Basin is able to utilize procurement contracts which are shared between government agencies to purchase OpenGov through Patriot IT. Staff was able to successfully negotiate an additional 18% discount. Of Table A, you will see we were initially quoted at $204,577. However, with the discount, it will now be $167,725 for implementation along with software licensing for 3 years. For the first year, it will be $82,850, which includes the one-time implementation cost. Staff did budget $73,500 in current fiscal year 23-24. There would be a variance of $9,350, which we would draw upon from reserves. Implementing OpenGov will provide the communities we serve with enhanced transparency through their transparency tools, leadership with additional financial insight, and provide the efficiencies to staff. I will pause here for any questions before I read the recommendation.
Why don't you read the recommendation first, Jeff?
Staff recommends that the board authorize the general manager to enter in an agreement with Patriot IT for procurement and implementation of OpenGov's budgeting and planning suite with associated tools for an initial cost of $167,725 for fiscal year 23-24, 24-25, and 25-26, and for future outgoing subscription costs for the duration of use of the software.
Thank you very much. I'll open this floor up to my colleague, Director Williams first. Questions or comments on this?
No, thank you.
Okay, Director Deere. Director Gray.
No, thank you.
Thank you. And, well, I was going to say I don't have a question. I guess I do have a question. I've heard of this company, things they do for years. Obviously, I think a lot of things that we utilize when we're looking online for information from a lot of public agencies, they happen to use this system. So just in the area, you know, a lot of folks use this system, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, this is pretty common in the
Right.
public service sector, right? Okay. And then the other thing that is noteworthy, of course, is this discount that we're receiving. Can you tell us again why that was? We're because of our affiliation with another
Well, we
organization?
currently use OpenGov for our procurement as well. And so we did reach back out to them and see if we can get additional discount if we were to purchase budgeting and planning software.
Okay, very good. And how long is this good for? This
The price is good for 3 years.
3 years. Okay. Very good. And one last question, I guess. Do we have to, you said that things are in a lot of different formats and such. So once you get this, let's say, approved, there's an onboarding timeframe to get the system in place?
Yes. So we are hoping to start the implementation next month if the board does approve this, and to potentially go live with the next budgeting cycle.
All right.
Be very aggressive to get it going live.
Okay. Well, with that, I recommend that this goes to the board for full approval on the staff's recommendation, and Director Williams.
Yes, I concur.
He concurs. All right. All right, thank you very much for that. Let's see, so 5F is in Frank. Authorized agreement, California Water Service Company for funding contribution towards the Juanita Melinda McDonald Carson Regional Water Recycling Plant Phase 2 expansion project. Mr. Caldwell.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to go ahead and introduce this item, and then, of course, we have Tammy Hurley here for the presentation of the staff and board memo. I just wanted to point out that there is an item on our closed session agenda, item 7B, for the real property negotiation of the property that is discussed within this agreement. I wanted to highlight that because I feel very confident that staff will be able to answer or handle any questions that you all might have. But in the event there is a question related to the negotiations, we could utilize that opportunity to step into closed session, as we do have our legal counsel here today. This item is something that began back prior to 2015. We received a grant that year in 2015, and we had already had the building blocks of how we were going to pay for this project, the Juanita Melinda McDonald expansion. And part of that deal was that we expected the refinery to pay a portion of that of the construction. And of course, California Water Service Company would also contribute to that project. We endured prolonged discussions with the refinery, and ultimately the refinery backed out, possibly, I think, back in 2020. But our longstanding agreement with California Water Service Company was that they would always contribute to this project. Unfortunately, due to a number of different issues, an agreement was never secured. Back in May of 2023, I reinitiated those discussions with the California Water Service Company. And I want to say thank you very much to Ralph Felix, the district manager for California Water Service Company, as he's very open to revisiting this item and expediting ultimately this agreement, because as you know, that project is scheduled to be completed, I believe, in September, October. So once that project is complete, we could have a far more difficult time getting an agreement secured because of the PUC process the California Water Service Company must go through in order to make investments in infrastructure. So with that, I worked with Ralph Felix and their legal counsel, and we got this agreement secured. Our legal counsel has reviewed the agreement, and I have Tammy here to run through the different provisions within that agreement, and hopefully we can take this to the board. Ultimately, we will have our legal counsel in person at the board meeting. And again, if there are questions related to the real property negotiations, we can always take that in closed session. So with that, I'll hand it over to Tammy, and perhaps I'll say a few words to wrap it up at the end.
All right, thank you, EJ. Good afternoon, board members. That was a great summary background, a lot of things in the works for the past few years, definitely. So I've been working to support the engineering team on a lot of paperwork related to the agreement that we have with the State Water Resources Control Board. So this item is being brought to you today, as EJ mentioned, to consider entering into an agreement, a funding agreement with Cal Water Service Company with their pledge to provide $4 million towards contribution of this expansion project. And Cal Water's funding commitment would contribute towards the design, the construction, and the recycled water rate setting for that retail agency. So since 2008, the district has commenced a series of studies and design development for this expansion. There's been a lot of activity, it would just briefly summarize. And so they have pledged to support this expansion project by providing $4 million. And also West Basin has been successful to secure grant funding and a low interest loan from the State Water Resources Control Board. So specific key items that are outlined in the agreement with Cal Water are two very important funding components. One is regarding the rates, and West Basin will work with Cal Water to cooperate with them on setting their rates for recycled water with the California Public Utilities Commission, as they are obligated to do. And then also is a funding commitment. So Cal Water would agree to pay West Basin $4 million within 15 days of receipt of an invoice of notice of completion for the project. So that is important to know as well. So staff is recommending that the board authorize the general manager to execute the agreement with Cal Water Service for their funding commitment to this project. And it would result in a favorable fiscal impact to the budget. So with that, I will read the recommendation, and we would be happy to answer any questions. So the recommendation is that the board authorize the general manager to execute the agreement with California Water Service Company to fund $4 million towards the Juanita Millender McDonald Carson Water Recycling Plant for the Phase 2 expansion project. Thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you, Tammy. And this all seems very straightforward. I want to say thank you to EJ and Mr. Felix for working diligently to get us to this point. With that, I'll just open it up for any questions. Questions from my colleague on this committee, Director Williams.
Thank you very much. Just a little need to know. Why is this facility named after a congresswoman, past congresswoman, and not after everything else around here is really named after a white male? So what happened here to change that?
That's a very good question. I don't know that I can have to.
Director Williams, I can take a stab at it. Really, if you look at the history of our facilities and the funding that West Basin received to construct those, including the original construction of the Edward C. Little Water Recycling Facility, we were able to secure funding through the Bureau of Reclamation and also the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And to do that, we obviously sought relationships within our congressional delegation to really advocate for us to get those funds. And you may recall back in this period, there were several members that were key allies to West Basin and this effort. One, of course, was Lucille Willard, who was always an advocate for West Basin's water recycling efforts. Congresswoman Juanita Millender McDonald was also a very significant advocate for our efforts, as was Senator Feinstein, who continues to serve in that role. And right now, yes, Grace Napolitano. Thank you very much. Again, has always been, one of the first signatories when it comes to letters of support. Now, I don't believe we have any staff here that was around for the construction of the Juanita Millender.
At the end, I was.
Okay, at the very end. But of course, so I can't tell you the exact discussion of that, but that probably played into it. And then, of course, I believe her son was a member of the West Basin Board of Directors as well.
Very good. So, well, I'm an Army vet and a member of West Basin, so there's hope.
Hope for you, Harold.
Thank you.
Actually, I think in this specific example, it's pretty much done by her son as president of this board. And it was done without a lot of discussion by the other board members, if I recall. It's kind of an odd, came about all of a sudden it happened without any real discussion. That was back in the old days.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add one thing. If you can turn to packet page 155, you'll notice that West Basin staff included the agreement that we are seeking approval for. I wanted to call your attention to section 2.2 and specifically 2.21. You'll recall that California Water Service Company also dedicated funds to the PV lateral.
Yes.
And as part of that, they received an asset equal to the value of their investment. And in order to expedite this, we did negotiate with California Water Service Company that we shall mutually agree upon an asset that can be provided to California Water Service at a future date. It's important to note that that process will require specific board action. No asset will be provided to California Water Service Company without your approval and a specific board process. And so I wanted to call that out so that everybody's aware of that. I've discussed this at length with Ralph Felix. We feel very confident that this is not an issue. And again, I think that the timing of it to secure the funding prior to the completion of the project is the most important aspect. But I wanted you to be aware of that, so I want to bring that up here in this committee meeting, and I'll do the same at the board meeting.
Very good. Thank you.
Excellent. Great. Thank you, EJ. And like I said, I looked through it. It's very straightforward, this agreement. It's really straightforward. So, I have no other questions on it. I don't think we need to worry about this at this time in a closed session as far as further discussion from the committee, at least from my perspective. So any final questions from Director Deere or Director Gray? Hearing none, I would say that we move this to the board for recommendation of yes from me.
I concur.
Okay, thank you. And hopefully that will move out as easily as the board meetings did here, but it seems very straightforward. I want to say thank you again for the work on this, especially as the deadline looms for completion of this project. And we wanted to get that funding in place, accepted here. And I saw that you're going to issue an invoice upon work completed. So once approved by our board, it's going to be on our staff to deal with that. So thank you, EJ. All right, next, let's see, item 5G. Agreements for the supply of nitrified and boiler feed recycled water to the Torrance Refining Company, LLC.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Similar to the last item, I do want to perhaps offer a slightly longer introduction than normal, and then hand it over to our Executive Manager of Engineering Operations, Barkov Messerlian, for the presentation. I just wanted to kind of highlight that back in May, I believe it was May 16th, myself, Barkev, and our legal counsel, BV&K, really kicked our discussions into high gear when it came to the Torrance Refinery. I want to point out that a great deal of legwork was actually provided even before that by Barkev and his team to engage the refinery as far as what would happen upon the expiration of the agreement for the delivery of boiler feed water. I want to give the Torrance Refinery the highest compliments because these items, these discussions are not always easy. There were disagreements, but I think in the end, all parties, including the city of Torrance, really wanted to see the continued use of recycled water at that facility. We went through a process where we met nearly weekly, most of the time in person, to discuss these. These meetings were not short, but they were very fruitful. And I think that the agreement that we have here today covers all of the issues that have been voiced by the West Basin Board of Directors, which is our intent to, in the future, move forward, recover the cost of service for delivery of recycled water to our refinery customers. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over to Barkev for the overview of the staff memo and the agreements.
Thank you, EJ. Good afternoon. As EJ said, our staff report starts on page 157. Like EJ said, this item calls for the extension of 3 agreements for the supply of both nitrified recycled water and boiler feed recycled water to the refining company. We have 3 agreements, one for the nitrified supply, one for the boiler feed supply, and then a third agreement for the lease that that agreement we entered to so we can build the facilities on the refinery's property to supply the water that they need. We supply over 4 million gallons per day, close to 4,700 acre feet per year of recycled water through the Torrance Refinery. And that supply really started in 1995 with an agreement to start putting in the facilities for the nitrified supply. So we do have a 1995 agreement for the nitrified supply, and the lease also started at that point. A few years later, we amended the lease to construct, to get more land and construct the boiler feed facilities, treatment facilities. On packet page 170, attachment D, you can see a map and an aerial view of both the nitrified and boiler feed facilities, which are situated in the corner of the refinery's property on 190th Street in Crenshaw. So the 1995 and 1997 agreements had 25-year, approximately 25-year term. And on the nitrified side, a couple of years ago, that agreement came to an end. So we entered into a new agreement, a 2-year agreement, where we intended to get the expiration date on the nitrified to match the expiration date on the lease and the boiler feed. Where all 3 agreements were coming in together. And we initiated discussions for a new master agreement. Those, like EJ mentioned, those negotiations have been very fruitful. We've been talking about the term of the new master agreement, what are the conditions of transferring assets, what are the conditions of transferring the operational responsibilities, what are the water quality specifications that we would adopt moving forward, what would be the capital that needs to be invested by the refinery to refurbish or upgrade some of the facilities at the treatment facility. So a lot of different types of discussions happening in order for us to get to the end goal here for a new master agreement. While the discussions have been fruitful, the parties recognize that we need more time to iron out the details. And so that's where this recommendation comes in for extending the current agreements. And you'll find in attachments A, B, and C, 3 different extensions for the 3 different agreements. And the amendments call for, they're pretty simple, but the key elements of the extensions call for that the current payments would continue for a 12-month period while we continue our negotiations for a new master agreement, and that these extensions allow for us to reconcile the cost based on true cost of service for both nitrified and boiler feed facilities. They also talk about the capital projects. If we were to initiate a capital project, we would need to get the refiner's approval for it so they can allocate funds for the capital project. And so we believe that this 1-year extension will have multiple benefits for all parties while we continue to iron out the details of a new agreement. And with that, I'll read the recommendation. Staff recommends that the board authorize the general manager to execute the 3 amendments provided in attachments A, B, and C, extending the current lease agreement and continuing the supply of nitrified and boiler feed recycled water to the Torrance Refinery through August 31st, 2024. Happy to answer any questions.
Did you have anything else to add?
No, again, I just want to reiterate my thank yous to Barkev and his team, as well as BBK, our legal counsel, the city of Torrance, and the Torrance Refinery. Park have just mentioned, attachments A, B, and C have the exact agreements that we're seeking support for. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions.
Very good, thank you. Question, start with Director Williams.
No, thank you.
Okay, good. Any questions, Director Jean? No. Any questions, Director Gray?
No, thank you.
Thank you. And I really don't have any questions. I just would probably say a couple comments. I want to say thank you to everybody involved. We see that there are multiple parties involved. It's a very straightforward set of items before us, just basically extending things for another year. All these talks happen, negotiations happen. And the one item, of course, is with the city of Torrance as well. So I believe that has to be approved by their city council somehow.
That is correct, and it's worth noting that Torrance staff did participate in each of the discussions. Secondly, our legal counsel, as well as West Basin staff, work with the city of Torrance's legal counsel and helped to kind of expedite this through their process. And so that they're in the process now of bringing it to their council.
And so really with all of this, I mean, at the end of the day, our staff, legal counsel, refinery folks, city of Torrance folks, everybody involved, everyone has brought it to this point. Everyone seems to be in alignment. So I'm confident of what you have before us. So I will this to the board with recommendation of approval, EJ.
Mr. Chair.
Williams concurs, and Director Gray. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I know you have a motion on the floor, but just comment. I do have the comment. I want to thank staff for their involvement in, this issue. I know it's always difficult to come to some kind of agreement with both parties, but I want to commend the staff and the legal counsel for their involvement. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Director Gray. And again, we're just recommending at this point it goes to the full board for approval on Monday. So you've heard from the committee, EJ. And with that, I don't think we have a reason to talk about anything further in closed session. I know that was just on here in case we need to. And so we are completed with this item.
Thank you very much. And I'll just point out again, these items will be included as closed session items on our full board agenda. So if the need arises to go into closed session and discuss those items, we're happy to do that.
And it is what it is. I'll note there's a massive amount of paperwork in here, right? All the backups from many years ago. But thank you for having all of that in here for us, EJ and staff. It's really important. All right, now we can move through our information calendar. EJ, correct? We're done with action calendar, right?
Correct.
So information calendar, item 6A, cost of service study, rate study overview presentation.
Yes, and I'm very excited to introduce this item. As you know, the cost of service study that West Basin is conducting is underway. We do have a team from Hazen & Sawyer as well as Bartle Wells Associates working with us to really analyze everything we do here at West Basin and provide some guidance and a vision for our future. And so to introduce this item, we do have Mary Ann Rexroad, our manager of finance.
Good afternoon, President Houston, members of the committee and board. I will be happy to present on item 6A, which does begin on page 247 of your packet. And I'll be brief. On an annual basis, your board does approve a resolution that adopts the rates and charges for the federal and imported water sales that brings in approximately 87% of all revenues. Those revenues do pay for our costs, which are then collected and paid and charged to specific projects and activities throughout the year. They're either charged directly or they're allocated to these different activities. In April of 2023, your board did approve a contract with Hazen Sawyer and Bartle & Wells to conduct the cost of service study. There were a number of items included in the scope, and I'm just going to highlight a couple for you. It does include reviewing the direct and indirect costs of providing potable and recycled water, evaluating the methodology and allocating the cost to activities and projects, evaluating the current rate structure for potable and recycled water, and also to possibly look at alternative structures to promote conservation and to provide fiscal stability. In addition, we will be looking at a formal rate policy, management policy, and other tools to model the cost and allocation for revenue requirements in order to determine our future rates and charges. Hazen and Sawyer, Bartle and Wells are here today to present an overview of the cost of service study project. In particular, they're going to review the project objectives, the project study process, and of course, the anticipated schedule to complete this study. And today I'm happy to have Dave Jones here from Hazen and Sawyer, and I will turn it over to you, Dave, to introduce your team.
Thank you, Marianne. Before you start, Dave, by the way, I'm really happy to see you in person. I saw you in the corner. I'm like, I know that guy.
I recognize you too.
Dave, put two together. Really, just one note. I was looking at the packet page, the front page, and it says in that last top paragraph that we approved this on April 24. So I was in August. I wanted to make sure that I thought it was a typo in here. I'm thinking, because tomorrow's August, so I was like, wait a minute,
Hasn't happened already.
My apologies. Okay, because I just want to make sure we didn't have a typo. So it's April 24th, 2023 that we approved this. And so here you are within just a matter of a handful of months to get us updated. So very, very good. With that, Dave, please.
Right. Well, thank you, Mr. President and honorable committee members. Pleased to be here. Again, my name is Dave Jones. I'm a vice president with Hazen and Sawyer. I'm the project manager for your cost of service study. And Hazen is real pleased to have Bartle Wells as a sub-consultant on this, teamed up with them. I consider this a perfect marriage between the two firms. Hazen knows West Basin, many years working with your facilities, know your stakeholders and your business environment. Bartle Wells are experts in cost of service and rate studies. Consider them the best in California for doing this work for water utilities. So I want to introduce the folks from Bartle Wells. Eric Helgeson will be presenting it. And let me, Eric, I see your cameo up on the screen. Is Doug here also?
Doug is, I believe he's on as well, yes.
Yes, I'm on also, Dave. Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll start with Doug. He's the president of Bartle Wells, and he was the first person I reached out to well over a year ago to start, doing our homework for this project. And so pleased to have him on board. Eric is Bartle Wells, Eric Helgeson, Bartle Wells project manager. And so he's going to walk us through the presentation today. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Eric.
Thanks, Dave, and good afternoon, directors. So as Dave said, I'm going to start by going through the study objectives, go over the study process, and then touch on the schedule. So I guess I'll just put the next slide, or I can share from my screen too, whatever's easier. And Dave already went through introducing the project team, and we're very excited for this project. I think next slide, please. So with the rate study, there are a few objectives that we must accomplish. We need to do our best to make the rates legally compliant. With the district, it's largely Prop 26, but with your retail customers, they also must focus on keeping their rates in line with 218. Rates also need to provide financial sufficiency. The rates need to recover the amount of revenue identified as necessary to support the district's operations and capital programs and other objectives. We also want to focus, we identified a few things we want to focus on with this project. We want to make sure that the rates are aligned with the district's objectives, whether that's supporting conservation, improving revenue stability. One area we're going to focus on is the mix between fixed and variable rates, making sure that that mix is still in line with the district's current objectives. We also want to minimize impacts to customers. Anytime you do a rate structure change, some customers will see their costs go up. And so we want to be careful and strategic and make sure that the benefit of any change outweighs the potential impact to customers. Also keeping in mind that we want to minimize any rate shocks to customers and make sure that the rates are on a predictable, smooth path, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And also want to make sure that the rates are aligned with future recycled contracts as well to support those contracts. Next slide, please. So the study consists of gathering all of the water and all of the financial and customer data, and then analyzing that data. The demand data will feed into the financial plan, allocation, and the rate design. We then developed a 10-year financial plan where we identify the revenue requirement needed from rates. We then allocate that revenue requirement to the different customer classes based on how they drive the district's costs. And then finally, within the revenue that's allocated to the different classes, we turn that into rates for those customers. And the final part of the process is the rate implementation and public outreach. Anytime you make a change, it's important to communicate why you're making that change to the public. We'll also, with Hazen, be helping provide a forecasting and rate modeling tool to the district as well. Next slide, please. So with the data collection, it's pretty straightforward. One thing to note is that as we collect the data, we're also reviewing financial policies and the rate structure as well as part of that. And I believe we'll be providing some comments or recommendations in a memo pretty soon down the road here. Next slide, please. When we do the demand analysis, we want to take into consideration potential growth, conservation, and your agreements. One thing to note is that when we look at demand, we're going to be looking at it from a rate-making perspective, which is a little bit different from an engineering perspective, where engineering, you want to be conservative and err on the side of assuming more demand to make sure you have sufficient capacity. We want to err on the side of less demand to assume that you're going to have sufficient revenues. So it's just a slightly different perspective on looking at forecasted demand. Next slide, please. So the next step in the rate study is developing the 10-year financial plan. And in this 10-year financial plan, we project all of the district's costs, capital costs, operating costs out for 10 years and identify the rate revenue requirement that's needed to support these functions. It's basically think of the financial plan as a roadmap to kind of chart your course financially for the next 10 years. Next slide, please. So when identifying the rate revenue requirement, there are some external environmental factors that impact that, such as inflation and demand being reduced due to conservation. However, there are policy decisions that do drive the overall rate revenue requirement as well. And this will be a decision point for the board deciding what that ultimate revenue requirement will need to be. And things that influence that can be what level of service you want to maintain. Are you going to expand the system? Do you need to strengthen the financial position? So those are policy considerations that will impact the overall rate revenue requirement. Next slide, please. So when we look at the revenue requirement, the reason we do a 10-year financial plan is we don't just want to look at what the revenue requirement needs to be next year, but we want to look at what it needs to be in 5 and 10 years so that we can recommend a path for the district to be on to get where it needs to go financially. In this example, it's identifying that the district will need or this hypothetical district will need a 16% increase in 5 years. One way to get there is 3% increases every year. Another way to get there is waiting until the 5th year and then doing a 16% increase. So we feel that your overall and better financial health and it's better for your customers to stay on a more smooth and predictable path. And another thing to note is that, you know, with inflation, costs are always rising. So staying on the path, you know, there will be some slight divergences, but it's a lot easier to make a minor adjustment than a large adjustment. Next slide, please. One final note to the financial plan is that, you know, we will be looking at reserves. Reserves are important to mitigate your risk. Also allows you to be, you know, if you have more reserves, you can be more strategic with when and how you finance. It also supports reduces the borrowing cost potentially by maintaining a strong credit rating. Every utility is different, and so there's not a prescribed level that's right for everyone, but it should be aligned with your overall risk profile. Next slide, please. So after we identify the revenue requirement needed, we then allocate that rate revenue requirement to the different customer classes. This is, you know, at the high level will be between potable and recycled water. And we do this based on how they utilize the system. So how we'll identify different functions of the system and identify how the proportion each class utilizes those functions. And then come up with a revenue requirement for each class, essentially, which will then be turned into the rates. Next slide, please. So as we get into the rate design, the first level is looking at the fixed versus variable revenue recovery, and seeing where you are on the continuum and you know where you might want to be. As you shift to more volumetric rates, you're sending a stronger conservation signal. Customers have a little more control potentially, but on the fixed end of the continuum, you're improving revenue stability and making your bills more predictable for your customers. So both are good objectives, and so it's just a matter of finding the right balance. Next slide, please. So this slide kind of highlights that balance of different competing but good objectives. So we'll be trying to find the objectives that strike the right balance for the district. And it's not just revenue stability and conservation, but rates can help support multiple policies, looking at the equity between customers, wanting to make sure that everyone is paying their fair share, affordability, how easy are the rates to administer. There are various things we can look at with rate structures. Next slide, please. And so the final step of the process is public outreach. Anytime you change your rate structure or increase rates, it has a significant effect on your customers. So it's important to communicate why it's necessary and how these rates are going to benefit them by supporting the district. Also, rate implementation is always tricky, and we'll be supporting by developing a tool to assist with rate updates and the planning process. Also, be available to as the new rates are updated in your billing systems and whatnot to answer any questions. Next slide, please. So the project schedule, we began at the end of June. We're in the data collection phase and starting to work on the financial plan. We're projecting to essentially have the bulk of the study wrapped up by early spring of next year, and then so the recommended outcome could be in effect by the next fiscal year. And with that, I think that concludes the presentation. I'll turn it over to for any questions.
Very good, thank you. Is there anything else, Dave or Matt?
If I could, just want to remind the board, we do have our internal process. Currently, we do collect those costs. We allocate those costs, but we thought it'd be a benefit for the district. And I think the board agrees to have this study done. And I'm really excited to be a part of it. It's going to be a lot of work, but I think there's going to be a great payback for the district in general. And this will take us out for a number of years. As you heard Eric talk about a 10-year projection. They'll provide tools for us, which we'll get to be trained on, which I tell my staff now, be ready. And then they'll be able to help us in the future years determine the right rates and charges for the district. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to open it up to my colleagues for questions or comments. So Director Williams.
Well, I would just like to say that I'm pleased to see this, that we are doing this, because this should have been done or given to us the day we came on board, that we have a better understanding of the pricing of water rate, because there's only one board member that I know of that really chimes in to the water rates. And it'd be good for all of us to understand what that means. That's all I have to say.
Okay, very good. Director Deere, anything?
We're doing a good job here.
Director Gray, anything?
Just great information. Glad that we've done this, and it's just great information for the board to have. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just would probably echo a couple of what was already said on one hand, but also I think, Marianne, you said 80-something% of our revenue comes from the water sales, something
right.
like that. What did you say again?
87% of this
yeah.
coming up year's budget is from our recycled and our imported water sales.
Yes, I think that's really important for not just, of course, the board to understand, but public to understand. So 87% of our income comes from the water rates, both the recycled and the imported, right? So a lot's at stake, especially as we're selling less water, and certain types of water anyways. We're hoping to sell more water in other areas like recycled and so on. So there's just a lot at stake for the district to understand and for the board to make decisions on for the long-term financial stability and resilience of the agency. So obviously the timing is perfect. And the other thing, and I think Director Williams basically said it, alluded to it, is, you know, we really haven't done a rate study like this or at this level in a long time. Right, EJ?
Correct.
I mean, I don't even know if anybody knows how long it's been, but it's well before probably the two of us have been up here. We've been here for over 8 years. So I don't know when.
As far as a comprehensive look of our recycled water rates, our potable rates and such, I don't believe we've done one since I've been here. We did do an analysis of our rates or our total revenue when we looked at adding a fixed charge that covers very specific costs. But outside of that, I don't believe we've done this level of detail.
That was a study that was conducted in 2017 with Fractalis.
Right, I remember that, yes. So we did some work there. Obviously, this is all in completely comprehensive. It's going to take you nearly a year, right, to get this done. I think it's extremely important, and like we've already said, yes, you know, we're really pleased that we are this far along. We got the contract approved. You all started work. This is what, you know, coming out of this, which will take time to get the data and your recommendations, but that's going to drive basically everything going in the future of this agency. And now that we also have, you know, some stability, you know, say stability in our leadership team, as well as, you know, yes, the board is here. We need to make sure that we allow you guys to do this work, and of course, to the best of your ability in an expedited way. But we've got to do our best to get this right, so we can make some really critical decisions on how we're pricing the water for our public and our businesses that, you know, they rely on us and we rely on them, right? Quite honestly. So, you know, I don't have any other questions or comments. Certainly both firms are highly regarded. We're happy to have you on board. I guess, you know, what I would ask would be, do we get periodic updates in this process?
Yeah, You chime in? Yeah, so I'm working with Mary Ann, laying out a schedule. We anticipate being in front of this committee every month.
Oh, okay.
In one fashion or another, keeping sure you're up to speed. And then, also appearing full board based on your recommendations.
Very good.
Anything else?
Looking forward to process as it goes.
We're pretty unique in our portfolio. Actually, probably very unique because we do have the different qualities of water and different price points and such. And then, of course, the MET system and the MET rates. And there's different opinions and thoughts, of course, on, our rates and how we pass things along. Although Director Williams has mentioned this in the past too. I don't hear a lot out there from folks, saying West Basin, you guys are overcharging or, you're exorbitant. I don't hear a lot of that. Now, obviously the retailers, they may hear more things than we do. But here at the wholesale level, I haven't heard a lot of, negative feedback, if you will. Separately, because the way you're doing this and you're working cooperatively with our retailers and they're going to be engaged in this process too, and they're going to get firsthand information in this transparent process. So I think it helps. Everyone will understand what the costs are, what our expenses are, and how the board needs to look at the long-term price points for the agency. So with that, thank you very much. I'm really glad you're already here, 4 months after this has been approved, basically to give us a firsthand look, and we look forward to those updates. And of course, between EJ and Mary Ann, they can contact the board if you need any engagement or not, et cetera, et cetera. So thank you, and thank you, Dave, so much for your
Glad to be here.
and the team that's online. So thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, let's see, we will probably be able to crank through most of this fairly quickly. So item 6B as in boy, annual disclosure fiscal year 2022-23.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, for this presentation, we have Allison Tong, our accountant too.
Good afternoon again. I'm going over agenda item 6B, which is the annual disclosure of fiscal year 22-23. It starts on your packet page 265. Just a little background. In accordance with California Government Code section 53065.5, special districts shall annually disclose any reimbursements paid by the district of at least $100 for each individual charge for service or product received. Individual charges includes, but is not limited to, 1 meal, lodging for 1 day, transportation, or registration fee paid to an employee or member of the governing body of the district. The finance team has reviewed all staff and directors' reimbursement for fiscal year 22-23 and identified reimbursements where the single charge exceeds $100, and the report may be found as attachment A, starting on packet page 267. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions?
No, thank you.
Questions, Director Gray?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. I have no questions. So thank you for that item. 6C as in cat, quarterly debt report.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, for this presentation, we have Wendy Nakamura, our principal accountant.
Good afternoon, directors. My report starts on packaging 269. As requested by West Basin Debt Management Policy, staff is required to submit a quarterly report regarding the current position of our total debt portfolio. If I can ask you to turn to page 271. Page 271, as of June 30, 2023, West Basin still have outstanding debt. The total principal is $186 million outstanding. For fiscal year 23, the annual principal and the interest expense is about the $20.9 million. That concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any question you may have.
Okay, any questions?
No, thank you.
Anybody else, questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Director Gray. I have no questions either. All right.
No.
So let's see, moving on to item 6D as in dog, fiscal year 2022-23 budget to actual results.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. For this item 6D, we do have Marianne Redford, Manager of Finance.
Thank you, EJ. Yes, if I could take a few moments just to update you. These are preliminary and unaudited numbers. Just want to put that up front, but this is for the entire fiscal year 23-24. So I will be presenting, we do have a small or short presentation to share with you today. The presentation does start on page 278 of your packet. All right, if I could ask you to move to the next slide, please. So on this page, again, wanted to reiterate this is preliminary and audited, but if you look at our annual budget, we did have a goal of achieving 1.28. That was after, if you recall, a number of amendments that were brought to the board throughout the year. We had originally started at 1.36, but we ended the year at 1.28 with a 5.9 as the goal for the budget. However, I'm happy to report we are looking at exceeding that at 1.32 with net revenues at $6.7 million. A couple of reasons for that. I'll go with in detail with you through the next slides. If we can move over to the first slide. Actually, I think it's the second slide. Yeah, one more. Thank you. These are your operating revenues. As we saw on the previous slide, we had about, well, say an unfavorable variance of 26 million. There were a few reasons for that. You can see on the slide here, the top one is our potable water sales. As we've been reporting throughout the year, we have seen historic lows in our sales, which came out to about 23.8 million below our budget. With recycled water sales, we did have also a negative variance of about 4 million. And we have another slide. I'll go a little bit more detail about the specifics on that. A highlight on this page is I always want to make something positive is we did have more interest earnings this past year. If you recall, interest rates are going up, so we did earn a little bit more this year. So if we can move over to the next slide, this gives you a little bit more detail about the sales on our imported water sales. As I mentioned, we were below budget, about 23.8 million. You can see from the chart here, we were down 13.6% overall in the acre feet between the retail and the barrier. But of course, retail was the largest portion of that deficit. We had budgeted 103,200 acre feet, and we came in at 88,580. A number of reasons you heard again throughout the year that we talked about was the conservation, the drought messaging that continued for the year. We did have the MWD upper feeder shutdown that occurred during the month of September. That was about 2 weeks where we really had a very low sales that month. And then, of course, we can't forget the rainfall. We had a lot of rain, many atmospheric rivers. I remember Matt giving a presentation to us, and I forget how many there were, but more than 20 of them that I recall. So all that contributed, unfortunately, to a negative variance in our sales. So if I could ask you to turn to the next slide. This slide then concentrates on our recycled water sales. And I have here just more the top categories, if you will, which we've broken down between our refinery, barrier, and disinfected tertiary. As I mentioned before, we were about 4 million below budget. There were a number of reasons for it, barrier being probably the largest here. A couple of reasons for that we did report on through the year was that LA County was doing some work on the rehab of wells and continued to limit the amount of injection. I believe Barkev actually did a presentation on that to explain a little bit more about that project. We did have also reported there were leaking valves repaired by the county that also limited the amount of injection we could do at the barrier as well. And just also want to point out that we did have to purchase supplemental water to blend in with our recycled water that was provided to the refineries. I just want to point that out. Even though we did have a positive variance, there was potable water that was injected there. So wanted to point that out. On the next slide, it gives you a little bit more detail about those recycled water sales. The only thing I want to highlight here is on our Chevron nitrified. If you recall, when we were doing the budget last year, we anticipated a tank repair project at Chevron nitrification. That did not occur, so you'll see that we had almost 2,000 acre feet above what we projected on that. Moving on to the next slide. Well, maybe I'll pause there to see if there's any questions about overall our revenues for this past fiscal year.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's move over to our operating expenditures. This first page gives you a high-level view, the imported water purchases down to all of the different programs that we have here in the district. Again, you heard me talk about the sales were below budget. Therefore, you see on our imported water purchase, that very top line, that we had a favorable variance of 17.7 million, just about because of those low sales, followed by our recycling operations. As I mentioned earlier, we did increase that budget a couple of times. I think it was a total of about 1.3 million during the year. However, we still were under budget. I think a lot of that was driven by the lower sales that we had for recycled water, but we'll go through that in a little bit more detail in the next slide. Another item I wanted to point out on our public information education program, you know, when we budget for these, we look at all the direct costs. We also allocate staff labor. We did have a couple of positions that were open through the year, and that contributed to that favorable variance. On the technical planning side, the numbers were about 1.9 million under budget. As you recall, we're still continuing our discussion with the pilot study, the MBR pilot study with LA and LA Stan. So we had budgeted funds in there that hadn't been utilized. So overall, we were down about 23.3 million of our expenses, which is a favorable variance. So moving on to the next slide. This is the recycling operations. Wanted to give you a little bit more detail by line item. Just want to highlight a couple of items on this slide. Our contract operations, you'll see, was about 1.1 million positive variance. Again, that was probably most likely attributed to the number of positions that were unfilled at the treatment facility and through our distribution center, or distribution system, excuse me. The next item was your utilities. As I mentioned earlier, we had to buy potable water to inject in the system. So that utilities line not only includes the power that we purchased, but also included that potable water we had to purchase. Therefore, contributed that negative variance of about 1.4, almost $1.5 million. And the last item I'll just point out on this slide was your chemical purchases. As I had said earlier, we did amend that budget a number of times, and we did end up with a positive variance of about 1.4, almost 1.5 million. Overall, we were down 9.5% on our sales. However, as a budget actual in the dollars, we were down about 5.7%. And I can pause there if there's any questions on our expenditures, operating expenditures.
Any questions?
Nothing.
Go ahead.
Moving on then to our non-operating revenues, this slide does show the three components that make up the higher, I'll say the major categories of our non-operating revenues and expenses. You'll see we were about 3.8 million above what we budgeted, so favorable variance. This was mainly due because of the initial portion of the grant that we received. We actually received the funds in the month of July. However, we recorded that in the month of June. And of that 7.3 million we received, 3.6 million of that was considered a grant. So we recorded that as grant income here. Moving on to the next slide, which is the last slide I'll share with you on the budget versus actual, is our capital projects. As you'll see, we had a budget of 45.6 million. We expended about 23.2 million. We have it broken down between the new infrastructure, the R&R, and other projects. A couple items that I'll point out under the new infrastructure. The majority of that cost, about 13.9 million, was for the JMM Phase 2 expansion. Another part of it was for some of the Title 22 converter filters, booster pump station there at 2.4 million. Of the R&R projects, there were a number of them, as you can imagine, but I'll say the largest ones that I could see were the cathodic protection system improvements, and the membrane replacements also were a large part of that 4.9 million. And then with under the other projects, I'd say the two major categories were the decommissioning of the Marvin Brewer desalter and then some of the R&R projects here at the district, as well as some of the concept design that was being done for the DLT building. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Board members?
No, thank you. Very good report. Thank you.
I have no other questions either, Marianne. Thank you for that. I think we've already talked about this, plenty. We revised down our budget numbers for the next year, this current fiscal year, to see how that kind of plays out. We don't look like we're expecting more than what may really happen. So let's see how that goes this year. Also, we have a lot of climate issues and the upset, wells closed and different things that affected our water sales. So we'll see how the year goes, and thank you for tracking that. Okay. All right, very good. I believe we're getting the last item, right, EJ? 6E, as in Edward. Monthly financial report.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and that you are correct. It is our last and final information item. So for this presentation, again, we have Marianne Rexroth.
EJ, Sandra Ruiz, who normally makes this presentation, is ill today, so I thought I'd just take this over for her. So if I could ask you to turn to packet page 292. This is your monthly financial report. This is required by your admin code that staff presents various financial reports to the board to keep them apprised of the financial condition and future needs of the district. So let's start off on page 294, which is your monthly demands for the month of July. This includes all the payments made during the month to support the district operations. 301, and at the bottom of, maybe it's in more the middle of 301, you'll see we had about 31 million in expenditures for the month. And that seems very high compared to what you normally hear. And that's mainly because we made our semi-annual bond payment in the month of July. This bond payment is larger than the January payment because this includes both your interest and your principal, and that's shown on at 16.4 million there. Sorry, it's a little small, but 16.4 million. The other large item, as we talk about every month, is our MWD bill at 10.6 million. But other than that, I don't have anything else to note on here, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions?
No, thank you.
I have no questions on that one, Marianne. You could move forward.
So we'll move on to item 6EB. This is your cash and investment report. This is as of 7/31/23. You'll see you had a total portfolio balance, a market value of $66 million. This is down from last month. We were at 72.7 million, but as I mentioned, we paid that very large bond payment in the month of July. But it was offset, as I mentioned, the 7.3 million we did receive in July from the State Resources Water Control Board. I think I said that right. So I'll just highlight a couple things. So looking to the right of that page at the top, you'll see that your portfolio continues to stay very well diversified. And then if I could have you move to just skim over to page 305 of your packet. These were your monthly transactions for the month. And the thing I do want to point out is you heard Malaga Bank today. We were able to renegotiate the recent maturity of the CD at 250,000. We previously had a 1.8% return on that on the interest. We were able to negotiate a 4.5% interest for a 1-year period of time. And the next month, you'll see we did have discussions on the other $1 million we have with them. That will be a little bit lower interest rate because it's going to go into a CDARS account, which keeps us safe because CDARS then invests that throughout multiple banks. We don't have more than 250 in each bank, and that's per the FDIC limits. So I want to point that out. The rest of the packet here, or the rest of the cash investment packet, I should say, is all of your holdings individually that we have here categorized by the security type. And then it finally ends the report on page 317. This is the glossary. If you have any questions on any of the meanings of the words that we use throughout the report, so you have your glossary there. Other than that, that concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions on cash and investments.
Questions?
No, thank you. It's very good.
Okay, no questions on that, Marianne?
Let's move on to page 320 of your packet. This is your monthly water sales. It is for the month of July, so not a lot of activity yet that we can talk about. Just starting at the very top with the imported retail, we did budget, as you mentioned, President Houston, less in this next year, 95,000 than what you budgeted the prior year, a little bit more than we found out our actual is going to be. We're obviously hoping for a rebound. Unfortunately, we didn't see that in that first month. We were very close to last year, but below from what we budgeted. We're hoping, as I said, to continue monitoring this and bring back more favorable news for you in the coming months. Looking down at the bottom of that page, we have our imported barrier. Again, not a lot to report here. For the month, we had 383 acre feet of sales. That was about 250 acre feet down from last year and about 200 acre feet down from the budget. And then moving on to page 320 is the recycled water sales. We did budget 33,032 acre feet for the year. For the month of July, we did exceed last year by 256 acre feet and came very close. Actually, we very close to the budget, about 80 acre feet from the budget. You can see on looking down at the bottom of that report, we try to break out the sales between our barrier, the refineries, and disinfected tertiary. I just will note, because it was shared yesterday at Monday at E&O, that there were some water quality issues from Hyperion that did cause the barrier to shut down shortly, and the production was reduced for a couple weeks thereafter. We are hoping that that problem is resolved and that we'll see better sales in the future. And that really concludes my report on sales. Unless there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions?
No, thank you.
No, I have no questions. Director Deere?
No.
Ray? I think so. So going on to the last portion, Marianne.
And this is your director's conference and travel expenses on page 321. And following that on 322 is your executive management and staff travel expenses, again, just for the month of July.
Okay, any questions on that? All right, hearing none, we will pass this on. So thank you, Marianne, very much for your report. Let's see, so item 7, we do not need closed session today. Correct. Things we need to talk about, and this will also be a placeholder on our next on our board meeting agenda come Monday, should any directors would like more information on a closed session. So with that, we'll move to item 8, director's comments or future agenda items. I'll start with Director Williams.
No, thank you.
Thanks.
Director Gray. Here, I don't hear her. So with that, I will just add a great meeting. I want to say thank you to staff. Thank you to Dave Jones and Hazen and the team over there. Thank you for the report. Thank you to Robin Bank. We covered quite a bit of information today, as well as a number of sponsorships. So thank you, Hazen, for processing all those, and to Desiree, of course, for helping make everything happen here for us. She's over there running the show while we're up here doing our thing. So with that, let's see, our next scheduled meeting is September 20th, 2023. And with that, we're adjourned.